quickly AI will be adopted, it is far easier to interact with a computer that understands your intention, what you want, because it's intelligent, than it is to program the computer one line of instruction at a time. The world has very few experts in C++ and C, but the world has many people who knows how to converse and ask somebody for help, and now you could interact with the computer in that very natural human way.
Tesla really
focused. And so we've really lowered the bar
Let me
for
ask
computing.
you, we're running out of time, gentlemen, but Jensen, overnight we had a new Taiwanese president sworn in. You've told me your position on China, but you both talked on stage about how global this is. You're still quite dependent on TSMC to manufacture your chips. Do you still focus on what's happening in Taiwan, what's happening in China? You've been very clear about your product side with China, but still geopolitical supply chain.
Without Taiwan, it would be very difficult for Michael and I to do our jobs. It would be very difficult for us to serve Bill and his company. And so the technology industry depends very heavily on Taiwan and continues to for some time.
Let's end on energy and power. People are conscious about
on the investment. If we weren't expanding our margin profile and growing our revenues at a record clip, it'd probably keep me up. But we are, because the AI revolution is the biggest market we've ever sold into. I do want to make a couple points. One is, it's very important what you started out the interview with, the openness. So with LLMs, we have a policy where any customer doing their own LLM or working with another large language model, they can bring their own to ServiceNow and fully integrate it into the platform. I want that on the record because this openness is a key part of our overall strategy. Why does that matter? Because of the globalization effect. If you look at NEOM, we're doing a smart city in the kingdom. Everything is being reinvented in that company by AI. So please know that this is not like a little thing. This is the biggest thing any one of the three of us have ever seen in our lifetime.
Pretty intense place to end it. Michael Dell, Chairman and CEO of Dell, thank you for hosting us here in Vegas. Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, Bill McDermott of ServiceNow. Thank you. Back to you guys in New York.
Ed, thank you so much. Great conversation. Bloomberg Technologies' Ed Ludlow there with Dell Chairman, Founder, and CEO Michael Dell, and NVIDIA, co-founder and president and CEO Jensen Huang, and of course ServiceNow Chairman and CEO Bill McDermott. If you missed any of it, just head to Bloomberg.com or check it out on the Bloomberg terminal.
We're also going to have analysis of that conversation in just a moment. A lot packed into it. Right now, though, let's get a check on the trade and top business stories. Here's Charlie Pellet with a Bloomberg News Flash.
Thank you very much. We're looking at a decidedly mixed market right now, with the Dow lower, down by about 0.4%. S&P up 9, little change now, up just under 0.2%. We've got NASDAQ climbing higher at a record of 111, a gain there of 0.7%. 10-year 4.43%, that 2-year 4.83%. Spot gold up 0.9%, 24.37 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.3%, 79.82 for a barrel of WTI. Investor Day for J.P. Morgan Chase today. J.P. Morgan Chase shares, they're trading lower by 3.7%. Again, recapping, S&P up 10, a gain there of 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. As you know, we just heard great conversation with Bloomberg Technologies' Ed Ludlow, catching up with Michael Dell, of course, Chairman, Founder, and CEO of Dell, NVIDIA co-founder, President, and CEO Jensen Huang, and ServiceNow Chairman and CEO Bill McDermott.
Again, a top performer in the S&P 500 for a second year in a row. Not a surprise if you've been following.
Dell doing pretty well this year, too.
What did you say to me earlier?
I think
up
it was
90%
up 90%
so far this year?
so far this year.
And NVIDIA reporting earnings on Wednesday. With us, Bloomberg Intelligence senior semiconductor analyst Kunjan Sobhani, who covers NVIDIA, joining us from our San Francisco bureau, along with Bloomberg Intelligence senior technology analyst Woo Jin Ho at Bloomberg Intelligence headquarters in Princeton, New Jersey, who covers Dell. Kunjan, I want to start with you. NVIDIA certainly top of mind, not just because of today, but because of Wednesday. What did you learn from Jensen Huang just now in that interview with Ed and Bill McDermott and Michael Dell?
Yeah, you know, nothing surprising. Everything that we have been hearing since the last GTC. The focus now, after sort of conquering the large cloud providers. The focus now for NVIDIA has shifted to, again, conquering the enterprise landscape, where Dell as a partner is very important for them. You know, most of the spending until now has been coming from the cloud providers, but now the second wave of spending we expect will be coming from enterprises, where partnerships like this are critical for NVIDIA to gain the massive market share there as well.
Woojin, I want to bring you into this because you covered Dell, and what was interesting, Tim and I are listening and get it, like there's interesting things going on, but did we essentially have three companies who will benefit big time by having AI, generative AI needs met by having companies create on-premise infrastructure build-outs, if you will? Is that kind of what we saw, what was going on a little bit?
Yeah, so I think we are starting to see that. It's still fairly early on, to Kunjan's point. The one thing I will say, over time, what you are seeing right now is a lot of the focus is on the cloud. But as training LLMs move from the cloud to inference, you're going to start seeing localized deployment of LLMs. So that's going to go back to on-prem or some sort of hybrid cloud type of deployment. That's going to benefit guys like Dell, and I believe a company called CoreWeave was mentioned on that as well, and also other co-location companies that's going to benefit. So, you know, we've had this hybrid cloud premise for quite some time now, not only myself, but also Anurag Rana with IBM, and I think it's going to play out with AI.
Before we go back to Kunjan, because we want to talk a little bit about AI PCs, Woojin, I want to ask you, why does it have to be localized? There's a debate about the pros and cons between on-premise generative AI versus doing it up in the cloud, and there's pros and cons, I believe, to both.
Well, I mean, on-premise it's more of a privacy issue than anything else. You know, if we remember the early days of ChatGPT, there was some very sensitive data that was uploaded to the cloud that people had access to in the public domain. We want to do more things on-prem if possible. That's number one, on a localized basis. Number two, there are going to be times where you're on a remote site where you will not have access to the internet or Wi-Fi whatsoever, or any kind of cloud connectivity. So if you can do some LLMs on-prem, that will help as well.
Hey, Kunjan, come on back into the discussion in terms of, first of all, the on-premise idea, and also what you're thinking about NVIDIA as we get ready for those earnings on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, look how Jensen said, on-prem never left. It was always there. It comes down to the workload use case, right? So when you have these mission-critical applications, financial data, defense data, security data, you do want it to be run on-prem. Now, the question has back in that cloud always has the most robust ecosystem. If cloud is only where you can get generative AI, you are sort of forced to, or desire to go to cloud, but you would want enterprises which run mission critical applications would want to run all those applications on-prem as well.
Woojin, I'm wondering about this idea of an AI PC, because just a few weeks ago, actually it was last week, we had Durga Maladi on over from Qualcomm. He's head of AI over at Qualcomm, and he talked a lot about the AI PC. And I'm curious, we heard a lot about that from Michael Dell just now, and from Jensen Huang. But explain to us what exactly an AI PC does for the average worker. What are the tasks that she or he are going to be able to do on it?
Sure. So let's talk about AI PCs fairly quickly. If you think about an AI PC, there's actually a neural processor unit, an NPU, that's embedded inside the PC. We saw some of that on the Apple iPad demonstration a couple of weeks back. And what it's trying to do is essentially automate a user's task. Let's think of it this way. When you open up the PC, the operating system itself is going to be the hub, and it's going to create, let's say, a dossier by looking at your messages, your emails, your calendar, and say, hey, these are the 4 or 5 things you need to get done, and we'll collect all of the information needed for you to be ready, right? Think about the hours that it'll save you from looking at your email, searching the docs to get ready for your meeting, and then, being prepped for your meeting. So all of this stuff, that's one of the key benefits of AI PC. I don't think we'll see it for years for that to happen, because there's an application, a bunch of applications need to be put together or stitched together by API to help support this.
I got to say, Kunjan, it feels like Jensen Huang is like the most popular guy at school right now. It's really fascinating to see kind of those three in a conversation, it's not the leather jacket, he wears them all the time, I get that, but it does feel like everybody just wants to kind of be associated with NVIDIA in some way. What did you make of the three of them in conversation in particular?
I mean, you got it exactly right. Look, this is the most sort of anticipated earnings every quarter and sort of a bellwether for AI. Look, from an earnings perspective, we keep on looking at him, right? And whether it's the numbers, the beat and raises, whether it's the roadmap that NVIDIA comes out with, because it's sort of fueling the spending, the adoption across the ecosystem, and it's no longer just impacting the company itself, but also the ecosystem around it.
Is there one thing in particular, Kujan, in terms of NVIDIA, though, that you are kind of top of mind? I mean, we have such high expectations for NVIDIA. Again, a top performer in the S&P 500. Last year, it was the #1. I think it's a little bit down the list, but it's right there. Top of mind for you.
Yeah, going into earnings, two things we're going to be focusing on. One is sort of the engagement or any kind of color around its Blackwell shipping ramp, which we expect in the second half and the next year. So that will be very important for full year 2 years out number estimates, because we expect Street to give upside to those numbers, and a lot will be coming from the commentary from the Blackwell. Second thing we would really like to see and ideal to see would be more color on their software revenue ramp, because we expect this to be getting more and more important as time goes on.
Hey, Woojin, 10 seconds. What are we going to be using first, an AI PC or a PC or an AI smartphone?
AI smartphone. Apple's going to come out with something.
All right, there it is.
Good
Guys,
stuff.
great stuff.
All right, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Semiconductor Analyst Kujan Sabani, and of course, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Technology Analyst Woojin Ho. Guys, thank you so much. Great breakdown of that conversation. Still to come, we've got the Wegovy copycat drug. Yeah, it's a thing. One more thing, though, coming up next. This is Bloomberg.
news headlines on Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We have got Alphabet's Google planning to spend $1.1 billion to build out its main data center in Finland because of its easy access. And next, shares of Alphabet. They are advancing today. We've got Alphabet up now by 0.7%. Hims and Hers Health is jumping into the hottest part of the healthcare market, and that is weight loss shots. Part of the company's pitch is the discount. Wegovy, made by Novo Nordisk, costs roughly $1,300 a month for injections without insurance. Eli Lilly's Zepbound is similarly priced. Hims says it is offering a treatment with the same active ingredient as Wegovy for $199 a month. That undercuts Big Pharma by as much as 85%. Hims shares, they're up today by 29%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings has raised its full-year profit outlook for the second time this month, while also updating its midterm strategic vision. Shares of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, they're up by 7.1%. Royal Caribbean up 4.4%. Carnival Corp up today by 6.7%. The cruise industry has been subject to unprecedented demand this year, with Royal Caribbean and Carnival also reporting record booking levels. Test workers are living in fear of a Dear Employee layoff email over a month into CEO Elon Musk's plan to slash at least 10% of the company's workforce. He is still not done, and sources tell Bloomberg it means anxious employees wake up every day to check their messages to find out if they still have a job. Those are our top company stories, and this is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
It is Bloomberg Business Week. Let's get a check on the latest world and national news. We got Amy Morris in the Bloomberg 991 newsroom in Washington, D.C. Hey, Amy.
Hi, Tim. The prosecutor at the International Criminal Court at The Hague wants to issue arrest warrants for Hamas leaders and Israeli officials, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House says that seeking those arrest warrants is, quote, outrageous. Prosecutor Karim Khan lists the specific charges.
The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health or cruel treatment, willful killing or murder, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population.
President Biden released a statement saying the U.S. will always stand with Israel against threats to its security. Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial underway. Trump's defense attorneys just said they may rest their case today. If that's the case, that means Trump won't testify. There's been a lot of speculation over who Donald Trump will pick as his running mate in the quest for the White House. One name that has emerged as a possible vice presidential pick is Republican Senator Katie Britt of Alabama.
I am sure he has a long list, many of which are our colleagues, and we're rooting for them for sure. Bottom line is we're going to all do everything that we can to get Donald Trump back in the White House and also take back the Senate, because the fate of our nation is at stake, and we believe that that's worth fighting for.
Republican Senator Katie Britt of Alabama speaking with Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it, with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. Now back to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Tim Stenevec.
All right, Amy Morris, thank you so much. Well, let's get to our one more thing, and basically watch out Wegovy and Ozempic, because there is a new kid in town, cheaper weight loss drugs.
Hims and Hers Health is the company that we're talking about.
Charlie talked about this, right?
Yeah, Charlie talked about the increase in the company's stock price today, up 29% so far today. But if you're in New York City, you might have seen this company advertising on the subway. They reached $1 billion roughly in sales. What you could do is buy easy, cheap, generic versions of popular drugs. And now they're using that same playbook, kind of, to jump into weight loss drugs.
And I gotta say, this is not certainly a name or company that necessarily has been on my radar in terms of what we do regularly here. But what's interesting is a big pitch is that they offer a big discount. So Wegovy, made by Novo Nordisk, you folks know that, costs roughly $1,350 for a month of injections without insurance. Eli Lilly's Zepbound, similarly priced. Hims says it's offering a treatment with the same active ingredient as Wegovy for $190 a month. That undercutting Big Pharma by as much as 85%. That's quite a discount.
Okay, it's a discount, but there's kind of a catch here. It's not the exact same drug. It's a compounded version of the drug. So these drugs still have patents, so there are no generic versions of these drugs yet because those patents haven't expired. But as our own Madison Muller and Jessica Nix write in their piece about this today for Bloomberg News, there's sort of a loophole when it comes to drugs that are in high demand and patents and FDA clearance. Compounding pharmacies are allowed to create versions of these drugs if they're in high demand and these companies can't create enough to satisfy demand for them. They don't have enough supply, and that's exactly what these compounding pharmacies are doing, and that's why Hims can sell it for $200 a month.
Basically, they're looking to make the drugs available, right? Because the existing manufacturers like an Eli Lilly or a Novo Nordisk, they just can't meet demand, essentially. And so this is what happens, and to meet demand, or when a pharmacist needs to tweak a drug's recipe to remove an ingredient that might cause an allergic reaction in some people, for example. So apparently compounding has exploded, especially as these drugs have been in demand. It is a fascinating story. We are certainly not done with it, so stay tuned over the next week or weeks because we're going to bring you a lot more, that's for sure. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Bloomberg Business Week. For those watching on TV, up next is The Close. Coming up, we have another great interview coming up.
Yeah, Li Chang is going to be sitting down with Satya Nadella over at Microsoft. We're going to bring that interview to you in just a few minutes. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio.
And a very good afternoon, everybody. We are continuing here on Bloomberg Business Week, just 1 hour away from the close of trading. A little bit of a different trade from earlier in the session, but nonetheless, we could see another record on the S&P 500.
Yeah, the Dow down 0.5 percentage point. The S&P 500, though, in green by 0.1%. The NASDAQ up 0.6%. Could be going for a 24th record, Carol, on the S&P 500 today.
All right, folks.
We're going to 24th record.
I mean, it's pretty amazing, the amount of records we've seen. Hey, we're going to continue this hour tapping into our team around the country, catching up with the leaders who are driving the top stories and trends. So on that, coming up in just a moment, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella live right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Plus, the CEO of Koya Therapeutics on a very special new approach to curing ALS.
Yeah, this is another big one. Also, the founder and CEO of the company. It's a cloud robotics platform. It counts Tesla, Apple, Stryker, and Bombardier as clients. We're going to keep you guessing on that one, but it's a fascinating mission in terms of what they are up to.
And getting inside the minds of VCs with the author of The Venture Mindset.
All right, right now we want to get into the mind of a really well-known CEO. Bloomberg Originals host Emily Chang right now sitting down with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella.
Welcome to our Bloomberg television and radio audiences. I'm here in Redmond, Washington with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella with some big unveilings at Build today. Satya, thank you so much for joining us. You've got a new version of Windows powered by AI that basically means you have your own AI agent on your own device. How will this AI-powered hardware experience be totally different from what we've seen before?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Emily. And yeah, I mean, it's really a ground-up, reimagination from silicon. So we have a new SoC that has the NPU. So think about it as we've always had CPUs and GPUs, and now you have neural processing units to, in fact, locally process these AI models. We have 40+ AI models that are local on Windows machines that then are being used by a variety of experiences that we have built into Windows, starting with this photographic memory feature called Recall, which is just phenomenal. And of course, Copilot is built in to Windows. And Copilot is just not an app. It's sort of a shell affordance that's going to be there assisting you as you be showed a demo of somebody playing Minecraft and, me just sharing my Minecraft screen with Copilot. And Copilot helps me finally be as competitive with my daughter on Minecraft as always dreamed of, right? And then, of course, the third parties. I mean, Adobe showed how they're bringing all of what they do to Copilot plus PCs and many, many more other developers. So it's an exciting day for us to have a complete rethink on the full stack of Windows for the AI age.
I bet you're pretty good on Minecraft, just a hunch. This new feature Recall means your computer basically has photographic memory of everything you do on it. And the speed at which this is all happening is just so fast. It seems so unprecedented. How will this really make things different for consumers and change our daily routines?
Yeah, I think if you think about the PC, it has always been about creating things, right? Which is, it's about being able to synthesize lots of information, create new information, pass better judgment, gain insights, and act, right? That's what you sort of do on a PC. AI is an assistant. AI helps you as an end user do anything, right? So one of the most beautiful demos today was even this thing called Co-Create, right? I am in Paint, and I'm painting a nice spring Seattle day, and I want mountains with wildflowers, and I can now have the AI assistant. That painter in me now can be inspired by AI, but ultimately I'm the one painting, and I get that satisfaction. I feel one of the things that's been, one of my coworkers was telling me when her 5-year-old is saying for the first time, give me designer time. That's what felt, it feels like in the late 80s and the early 90s when we all fell in love with PCs. That was what really got us going, which is the ability to use computers to create. And I think this AI is just going to take it to the next level.
Microsoft has had trouble keeping up with some of the new cutting-edge Macs, and you did do a lot of side-by-side comparisons today. Have you narrowed the gap today, truly, and how much share do you think you can take from Apple?
Well, I mean, I think today was a day where we brought some of the efforts that we've had for a long time all into focus and really brought cohesiveness to them, right? For example, we've been on this journey to bring, I'll call it ARM-based PCs for a while. Finally, we now have the best ARM processors, which are really, the performance of the CPU itself is cutting edge. Then you combine it with the NPU and these experiences. I think we are now going to start, just like, when it comes to the cloud. Let me take another one, right? Which is when we came from second and became a leader in the AI age on the cloud. I hope on the PC we bring good competition. I mean, Apple's done a fantastic job. We now want to bring real competition back to the Windows versus Mac when it comes to the AI age.
You've been doing a lot of unique deals to move quickly. For example, this $650 million investment in Inflection. You hired the team. You hired the co-founder, Mustafa Suleyman. Are you at all worried that regulators are going to crack down on investments in acqui-hires the way they have cracked down on M&A? Like, do you wish you could be buying these companies outright?
I mean, look, the regulators have to do what they have to do to make sure that ultimately there's competition, right? I mean, if that is the case, then I think one of the fundamental things that I think all regulators need to stay grounded on is where is competition, what are the sources of competition, and how to foster them. To me, that's what we're doing, right? Today, there is formidable amount of competition, right? Whether it is between the big players or the small players, and there's partnerships are also a source of competition. So I don't think that this is about any one company acquiring or not acquiring, but it's about competition. And as long as regulators focused on that, and we focus on it, I think we'll be fine.
Microsoft just took a big stake in the Abu Dhabi AI company, G42. Brad Smith joined the board. This is a company that at least at one point had ties to China, so there do seem to be some big geopolitical implications here. Is this your play in a tech Cold War?
First of all, it is important for us to be grounded in the fact that we're a multinational company, but that also happens to be an American company. So we did this partnership with G42 and the UAE with sort of the real involvement of the U.S. government as well, where the U.S. government has now an assurance program with the UAE, which both the government, it's a state-to-state agreement, and that allowed us, in fact, created the conditions for G42 and Microsoft to come together. But I think it's important for us as a company to be grounded in the fact that we need great partners who then allow us to expand what we are doing globally, right? Because at the end of the day, one of my dreams has always been, Emily, that can the information revolution, perhaps after the Industrial Revolution, was just magical in the sense that it diffused fast around the world. But this intelligence revolution, to me, can even take it even to the next level, right? Which is when people in the Middle East, or whether it's in Asia or Africa or Latin America, can enjoy the benefits of this technological wave. That will going to require real partnerships, and I'm very, very excited about this one.
OpenAI is your closest partner in Microsoft history. They just released a ChatGPT app for Mac before Windows, and we're reporting the same is going to happen for the iPhone. How do you balance partnering with them and competing for their attention?
First of all, like OpenAI, will decide how to prioritize platforms and how to really go about managing their roadmap. And we're very excited. In fact, I'm thrilled to have, today when you saw the launch, we basically took GPTO and made it part of Copilot. So Windows is going to have some of the latest innovation from OpenAI and the latest innovation from Microsoft built into Windows. So therefore, I'm thrilled about their prioritization of the Mac.
ChatGPT 4.0 is, it's a pretty big wow. Have you tried ChatGPT 5?
Oh, so the latest, oh yeah, of course.
What about the next one? We hear reasoning
Oh, you
is
mean
the next step.
You mean, so the next version, which I believe has not been named, so I don't want to talk for them. But, look, I think OpenAI as a company has really focused a lot on not only moving the frontier forward, but also doing it with really safety first. And so they're very carefully thinking about what's the next big model. But the thing that GPTO, like I don't want to understate the innovation in what they just launched last week, right? Which is just the first time they've been able to bring multimodal capabilities natively into the model, and you're seeing it. Like in the wild, as you use Copilot or ChatGPT, you can see the power. It's just, most people think, oh, GPT-4 came out, 16 months ago, but it's not been static. It has been continuously getting better, and we're excited about it.
So on that note, you stressed trust a lot in your keynote today, but there have been renewed concerns over the weekend about safety at OpenAI. More key employees have left, one saying safety has taken a backseat to shiny new products. What kind of conversations have you had with Sam Altman about this?
Look, I mean, at least one of the fundamental things that brought OpenAI and Microsoft together way back even in 2019 was that focus on how do we make sure that we can make progress. At that time, it is not even clear as to whether things will even work the way they worked, right? But even there, that company was very grounded on their mission around, hey, we want to bring the benefits of this to the broadest set of audience and do it safely. So, and that requires, at least in my mind, I fall into the camp of iterative development of it, right? You can't just be in the lab. You have to get it into the real world, see the adversarial attacks, make the safety harnesses better. That doesn't mean you don't take safety first as the most important feature. In fact, I say, even at Microsoft, which is, the most important feature of Azure AI is our safety service, because that's what even gives us permission to deploy anything, right? You can't just deploy. I mean, if I take the base model, like even take today's announcement, it's just so important, right? Windows now will have 40+ models that are going to be on board on Windows. But guess what? In order to keep them safe, we will use the Azure AI service, because we will be learning every hour of every day what is the new adversarial attack. And that knowledge, that learning will keep all the AI models safe, because the next jailbreak that happens, we'll learn about it and make sure that that doesn't happen on the local model. And so that's, I think, the only way we're going to keep AI safe.
All right, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to send it back to you guys, and thanks to our Bloomberg television and radio audiences.
All right, Emily, thank you so much. Our Emily Chang there with the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. Microsoft shares, by the way, folks, just up about 1%. This on a day where they have made some announcements, and I do feel like, to some extent, Tim, the era of AI-focused PCs is here, or should we say the narrative of AI PCs is here?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to our folks over at Bloomberg Intelligence last hour, and they said, we're years away from this vision of you opening your computer in the morning and a clean agenda with having read all your emails, looking at your calendar, synthesizing all the information so you're prepared for your meetings. That at this point is years away. But look, Satya Nadella, Michael Dell, Jensen Huang, Bill McDermott, they're all saying, hey, the era of the AI PC, it's here sooner than you think.
Yeah, Microsoft introducing new software and computers infused with AI features, so definitely stepping up its efforts. The competition is on. They are looking at what Alphabet's, Google's doing, what Apple's doing, the dawning of the AI age, folks. It is here.
We want to bring real competition to Mac versus PC. Do you remember those old commercials? I'm a Mac, you're a PC?
Yeah.
Okay, so then, so these two companies hated each other for a long time, and then there was this moment in an iPad demo a few years ago when a Microsoft rep was on stage there, and these companies were closer because the software was being run on Apple computers. I wonder if we're going to see an era where there's like fierce competition again.
Yeah.
Perhaps. I don't know.
I know. We shall see. We shall see. But it's interesting because in the tech world, I was just going to say, I mean, we just saw, the CEO of NVIDIA. We saw the head of ServiceNow.
Yeah.
And we saw Michael Dell of Dell Computer. Like, you know, these technology companies that work together, but they also, some of them at least, compete on different levels. So we're going to watch that. Also watch the markets. Not as much enthusiasm as we saw earlier in the session.
But there doesn't need to be for the S&P 500 to hit a 24th all-time high today. It just needs to close in at the green.
Just get over.
Hey, let's get more with Abigail Doolittle. She's Bloomberg News Chief Markets Correspondent. She's here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Abigail, I have to say, you walked in, you looked at the markets, let out kind of a sigh, and you said, there's not much going on ahead of NVIDIA.
It's felt that way for a number of days
It
now.
has,
We just
hasn't it?
have, I mean, we have very small moves for some of the indexes. The S&P 500 right now up about 0.2%, and late last week, to my memory, there were a couple of days like that where we actually fluctuated up and down. The equal-weighted S&P 500 down slightly, the Dow down a little bit more, down 0.4%, and then the NASDAQ 100 up more, 0.7%. The real outperformer, and this brings it back to NVIDIA, is the SOX, up 2.1%, and NVIDIA really leading the way there. But what's so interesting, the SOX is not at an all-time high, nor will it close at an all-time high today. It's sort of trying for that level. Its RSI, a momentum indicator, is trying to get overbought. But I would say that chart looks very, very confused in a way. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this report and how investors react. It's to really set the SOX going higher. And even the NVIDIA chart. The NVIDIA chart itself is much cleaner. They're going to need to put up something really pretty spectacular.
The SOX is up almost 9% here in May. I mean, it's
Just
interesting.
in May.
Just in May.
Well, it's a rebound because the SOX from its all-time high, I'm going to measure it right now, down. So the SOX was almost in a bear market. I actually didn't realize it until we're talking about that now. The SOX is down 18% from its March 7th high to its April low. And so now this big rebound, people want back in. Now
But you've seen some rally and then some pullback and then a rally again.
Yes, and yes. So this rally is healthy in the fact that there's some consolidation in there. It's not just taking the elevator up. There's a little bit more of a stairs within there, if you will. But this company is going to need to put up some really great results, which is what they've done. At some point, it seems likely that they're going to have, just out of a law of large numbers, at some point, it seems as though they might struggle. Although, unless, speaking of AI, if it's just sort of this, for now, infinite universe, maybe, the growth really just goes gangbusters for quite some time.
So, Abigail, I want to go back to something you said about NVIDIA, and I want to make sure I have this right.
Okay.
If NVIDIA doesn't blow it out of the water on Wednesday, what are the implications of that?
Well, let's take a look.
Because expectations are high. But every time expectations are high in recent quarters for the company delivers.
So like in terms of weightings in terms of the markets?
So it's a 5% weighting. So I'm just going to take a quick look at, I want to give a little extra perspective here. So NVIDIA over the last year is up 205%. This year alone, let's just see, it is, I'm doing live math and my Bloomberg is stalling here. Okay, here we go. This year alone, 92%.
Yeah.
So they really, really need to perform. I mean, to put it mildly. I mean, the pressure is always on them, and they have since this quarter last year. If you recall, this was the quarter last May when the guide was 50% better. I've never seen a guide beat like that.
Yeah, that was incredible.
To the degree that I thought that they were either withholding it from another quarter or pulling, I mean, it was just, I've never seen anything like that on big numbers, even on small numbers, but on big numbers, it was incredible. And they've continued to put up equally good quarters. If they don't do something like that with the stock up 92% on the year, 200% more than 200% over the last 2 years, I would say the stock is probably going to struggle a little. Does that mean it's going to crash? No, but could it consolidate in sort of the range? I mean, you can easily make a range on NVIDIA. It's basically trading in a range between, let's call it, 742 and sort of current levels. The thing that I'm surprised by, it had been very vulnerable before. They have to put up a tremendous quarter. Just taking a quick look here, I think options on this thing, this time around it is true, but it's almost always true. They always imply an 11% move up or down, and typically it almost always is. So right now I'm just putting in that momentum indicator to see if that gives us any extra color here. So this chart's actually pretty bearish because the momentum indicator at the high earlier this year, the RSI was at an 85. The RSI is currently at a 61. We're not far from that all-time high. So that tells it just tells you people are nervous.
Well, this is where, if they disappoint, if there's that nervousness in the market,
there's going to be an air pocket.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, there will be an air pocket.
Good stuff.
Jensen Wong looked pretty chill.
I was
right?
going to say, he's like,
He looks pretty relaxed.
I'm ready to go get into the
Ah, so you're doing some psychological profiling here in terms
it's the
of
leather jacket. It always
Yeah.
makes it look like he's confident.
That's some of these people who you see a lot that have like that uniform. It's good.
This is Bloomberg.
It's 3:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We begin with a developing story and a headline right off the Bloomberg Professional Service. Sprout Social founders said to be in talks for a go private bid, that according to Reuters. We've got stocks right now trading very mixed, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average in the red, down 171 points, down 0.4%. S&P up 8, 53.11 right now, gain of 0.2%. The Dow at right now, NASDAQ up 0.7%, up 116 points, 16,802 on NASDAQ. The Dow, by the way, in the red, down 0.4%. 10-year 4.43%, with a 2-year 4.83%. We have got spot gold up 0.6%, 24.30 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.6%, 79.60 for a barrel of WTI. As for the market backdrop, Eve Devitt is Chief Investment Officer of Moneta Group, and she does see the rally broadening.
We certainly still have the focus on the Magnificent Seven or the Fabulous Five or whatever number we're reducing them to, but certainly the other sectors, as well as other cap sizes, mid cap and small cap, are importantly seeing some action. And it's not just about the US anymore either. Finally, markets like the UK have followed suit and are now on a par with other developed markets. So we are seeing the broadening, but it's still quite concentrated in relative terms.
And Devitt was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television. The big earnings event this week will be NVIDIA on Wednesday. NVIDIA up now by 2.8%. Other chip makers, including Micron Technology, also advancing. Micron upgraded to equal weight from underweight by Morgan Stanley. Shares of Micron up now by 3.6%. Recapping, S&P up 8, up 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. Really do appreciate it. Well, shares of the micro cap publicly traded biotech, Koya Therapeutics, surging earlier today, up as much as 11% on news that the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation has purchased more than 603,000 company shares for a total investment of about $5 million. Here to talk about the investment and on the work they are doing around ALS treatments, as well as Alzheimer's, is Howard Berman, Chairman and CEO of Koya Therapeutic, joining us from Boston. That stock, by the way, up close to 20% so far this year. Howard, nice to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about your company, because you're working on some really serious stuff that impacts the brain that I think, unfortunately, pretty much everyone who's listening or watching right now has dealt with in terms of their family or somebody close to them. Lay it all out for us, if you could, what you're working on and how you think you're able to pull it off.
Right. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. And just to say that I am one of those people who it's affected directly. My own father, unfortunately, a brilliant clinician, he himself had dementia and unfortunately passed away. So this is very personal to me, that we're developing therapeutics for neurodegenerative diseases, including dementias, as well as Lou Gehrig's disease, which is, as people know, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And what we're doing is we have therapeutics that target multiple pathways that are involved in inflammatory pathways. The goal here is to dampen the inflammation, which we've discovered plays a central role in the pathophysiology of these diseases.
I think it's interesting that, and Howard, great to have you here with us. I do feel like we are learning more and more about the body overall and the importance of inflammation, right? And how do we either prevent that to begin with, but that it is, often the cause of so many things that ail us. When it comes to ALS specifically, it is ALS Awareness Month, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, the famous New York Yankees baseball player who had to retire because he was diagnosed with it and had come down with that. It is, at this point, if you get that diagnosis, the outlook is not good.
The outlook is terrible. Patients typically die within 2 to 3 years on average. So the disease is incessant. Patients decline month upon month. And the problem is that the drugs that have been used so far, the mechanisms have not been well defined and not well understood. But again, inflammation is the central component in ALS. But the problem is you cannot target one pathway. One has to target multiple inflammatory pathways, which is why I believe that the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation, who we just received this investment, liked what we were doing, because they too believe that targeting multiple cascades and pathways are the future of treatment.
So what does this investment do for you? And you're right, your stock really popped initially on the news, up as much as 11%, as Tim mentioned earlier. I think it's little changed on the day as we speak, but we're talking about a $5 million investment. What does this do for you guys specifically in your work?
While we are focused entirely, at least initially, on ALS, we have expanded our pipeline. We're now moving into frontotemporal dementia, which is the second most common type of dementia after Alzheimer's disease. And so this money allows us to pursue a trial, a phase 2 trial, to be filed this year, an IND filed this year. And unfortunately, in FTD, with frontotemporal dementia, there are no approved treatments for that condition. So we will work alongside the ADDF to pursue this indication, and we're going to run a rigorous trial that answers a number of questions. And we hope that this therapy may make a meaningful difference in patients.
Hey, Howard, how does your approach here differ from the approach of other companies that are working on this?
So, as I mentioned, inflammation is a central pathway and mechanism in these diseases. Many other companies target one pathway, or they target a cytokine, but that, we believe, is not sufficient. So what we do is we enhance the regulatory T cells, the Tregs we call them, which are anti-inflammatory cells. But that is not all that we do. We also block other pro-inflammatory pathways with another drug called CTLA-4, and that reduces or inhibits the other cascades that are responsible for the disease pathophysiology. So by doing both, the upregulating the regulatory T cells, downregulating the pro-inflammatory cascades, you're able to slow the inflammation or block the inflammatory process and ameliorate or relieve the disease conditions and part of the pathways that are responsible for progression.
All right, it sounds logical. I'm not going to say it sounds simplistic because it doesn't, but I'm listening to your train of thought and I'm like, I kind of get this, but I'm assuming none of this is ever easy. What's the most complicated part of this? And is this only for patients at a certain stage of the disease? Is there a point where the inflammation or the ailment is so severe that it's not going to work?
We don't have an answer to that, but we've tested this combination already in Alzheimer's disease, and we were very surprised in the early studies in mild to moderate patients, which are more advanced patients. Those patients actually responded. Those patients, their cognition was enhanced. And in ALS, in patients who weren't doing very well, the ALS progression was stopped. So we believe that this therapy or this regimen may have an impact in more advanced stages. However, we do want to start testing this initially in patients who are less progressed to give the therapy the best chance of success, at least initially.
I'm curious about competitors out there. There's an FDA advisory committee meeting on the Eli Lilly Alzheimer's drug coming up in early June. The Lilly drug, though, has been delayed amid concerns about its unusual trial design. I'm wondering how important you think this advisory committee is going to be.
Yeah, well, advisory committees are important because they involve thought leaders and experts, and certainly the FDA uses them to help guide their decisions. Let me tell you about the approach that's typically taken at this point in Alzheimer's disease. The targeting of beta amyloid, which is this protein, this misfolded protein, the sticky protein, if you will, that's responsible or partly responsible for Alzheimer's disease. It's a complex story, and while the existing therapies have shown slowing of progression, there are lots of side effects and there's toxicities associated with it, and it's only a mild slowing of progression over a period of time. The advisory committee will do their best. They know that there's a huge unmet need and patients are in desperate need and their families are in desperate need. So they're doing the right thing, and the FDA advisory committees are also doing the right thing. Everyone is trying to come together to protect patients, but also to make sure that the treatments that they do approve and that they keep on the market are safe and efficacious as well.
Hey, I do wonder, and I'm sure you've seen at 60 Minutes, Dr. Ali Rezai, and basically using ultrasound to help in the penetration of drugs for whether it's Alzheimer's, also addiction. And I do wonder whether that is something that might need to be paired with what you are doing.
Sure. So people in the past have looked at the mechanisms of trying to enhance the penetration of drugs into the brain. What you typically find in Alzheimer's disease is that the blood-brain barrier is somewhat leaky,
right,
which means that drugs that normally would not have crossed or in a normal healthy individual may cross in patients with Alzheimer's disease. But I think the most central thing to understand is we target inflammation, and if you can modify inflammation in the periphery, in your blood, that actively involves manipulating the cells in the central nervous system in the brain, because the immune cells can move back and forth from the periphery to the brain. So in our case, we don't need to manipulate the blood-brain barrier, but there are also issues or possible toxic effects by trying to make the blood-brain barrier more penetrant for drugs in the periphery.
Well, I just, it was something top of mind for me. I spent some time talking to Dr. Razai at Milken and one of the speakers. So I hope you will come back. I know phase 2 trials, once you guys know a little bit more, I hope you will touch base again, because this is obviously something on the mind of a lot of us. And as you said, you've had personal experience, and we certainly all have personal experience with that as well. So I hope you will come again. Howard Berman, Chairman, CEO of Koya Therapeutic, joining us right there.
Hey, let's get a check on the latest world and national news from Boston to New York to Washington, D.C.
I'll be Amy Adams. It's perfectly fine. Thanks, Tim. After 4 days of intense questioning, the testimony from Michael Cohen has ended. The prosecution has rested its case against Donald Trump in his criminal hush money trial. Trump's defense attorneys said they only have 2 brief witnesses and may rest their case today. Now, if they do that, that means, of course, Trump will not be testifying. We're watching that for you. The prosecutor at the International Criminal Court at The Hague wants to issue arrest warrants for Hamas leaders and Israeli officials, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House says that is, quote, outrageous. Prosecutor Karim Khan on those specific charges.
The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health or cruel treatment, willful killing or murder, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population.
President Biden released a statement saying that, quote, there is no equivalence, none, between Israel and Hamas. We will always stand with Israel against threats to its security. Republican Senators Ted Cruz of Texas and Katie Britt of Alabama introduced a bill that would require states to allow IVF as a condition of receiving federal Medicaid funding. Both Cruz and Britt were guests this morning on Bloomberg Television.
Our bill is very simple and it's very focused, and it is designed to protect IVF.
The legislation follows concerns that were raised in Alabama when the state Supreme Court ruled frozen embryos are also considered children. Ivan Boesky, who reached the pinnacle of fame and fortune as a high-flying Wall Street trader in the 1980s, only to be exposed as a cheat in the insider trading scandal that defined the era, has died. Ivan Boesky was 87 years old. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg.
It's 3:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We have got the Dow trading at just about the low of the session. S&P, NASDAQ, they're both higher. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks are trading mixed amid that drop in J.P. Morgan. The Dow is currently down 185 points. S&Ps are higher by 8, while NASDAQ rises by 0.7%. The U.S. 10-year yield at 4.44%. Gold is higher by 17. Oil's in the red, but Bitcoin, that's higher by 5%. Among the main 11 S&P sectors, leaders were tech and telecom. Energy and financials were under pressure, and leaders to the upside in the Dow, Caterpillar and Microsoft, while J.P. Morgan did fall 4% after Jamie Dimon tempered buyback expectations. In the chip space, NVIDIA traded back to $950 a share, and in others, cruise operators rose after Norwegian Cruise boosted its guidance. Wrapping things up, Palo Alto Networks reports after the bell. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill Maloney. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type SQUAWK, SQUA, on your Bloomberg terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, just about 18 minutes left in today's trading session, getting ready to wrap up this Monday trade. And as you said, Tim, anything in the green on the S&P 500 would be another record. It would be the 24th record on the S&P 500 this year.
The S&P 500 up 0.1% right now. The NASDAQ up 0.7%.
But that's
we just
enough.
got the numbers.
But
It's
that's enough.
So far this year, Carol,
Yeah.
12% up on the NASDAQ composite, 11.3% on the S&P 500.
Yeah, I'm looking at
It's
the S&P.
May. It's not a bad year.
Sell in May, go away. Oh, wait, does that happen? Could it?
It depends on the year.
All right, let's get to it. Our drive to the close guest is with us. Back with us, Lamar Villere, portfolio manager at Villere & Company. They have about $1.6 billion in assets under management. He joins us from New Orleans. By the way, the Villere Equity Fund up nearly 5% year to date, underperforming most of its peers according to Bloomberg data. Lamar, great to have you back with Tim and myself. What's fun about talking with you guys is that you get into names, but let's talk about performance, because you know that is certainly a benchmark. What is it about this year that maybe is more difficult for you guys in kind of figuring out where you want to be with your portfolio?
Sure. So, I mean, basically, we tend to be a little bit smaller cap in size, so our focus is on the smaller companies, which we think have a better chance to outperform in the long run. Unfortunately, the story, as you know, over the recent times has been, big tech, big tech, big tech. So that's been a challenge for us, but we're sticking to our guns.
Why do you have so much conviction?
Well, we think some of the big, the Netflixes and Googles of the world, they're attractive companies. They're performing well. But unfortunately, those are very crowded trades, and to heighten that, we think that a lot of people are just sort of plunking money into the S&P blindly. So you're resulting in a situation where you have a huge exposure to one small area, and it tends to be pretty expensive. So it's our view that trade is going to unwind, and it's going to be a much better outcome for guys like us who are really more focused on the smaller companies.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's kind of a lonely trade right now, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, it's more fun to be with the crowd for sure. But what we've learned over 100 years we've been around, and that tends to end badly. So we're sticking with our guns.
What's the catalyst? Is it a lower rate environment as long as we don't run into a recession? How do you see it?
I can't tell you what the catalyst is going to be, but eventually, when you have everybody piled into the same trade, it tends to end badly for people who are on that board. So we just kind of keep our heads down and focus on what we're doing and finding the best companies at a reasonable price, and that's worked out for us in the long run.
Well, talk to us about a name that you like, Atlas Energy. I mean, it's up 42% this year. It's about a almost actually $2.7 billion market cap company. So what is it specifically that you're liking about this? I mean, we've been watching the energy sector, and that's certainly been very interesting this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, so Atlas specifically, even with the fact that it's traded well in recent months, you're still talking about a company that's trading at below 10 times next year's earnings. Furthermore, they've got their pipeline or their Kermit Express, which is going to deliver 46 miles of conveyor belt delivering the sands throughout the Permian Basin. So they're going to have a significant pricing advantage over their competitors. So we think now's a great time. That's going to come online. It's Dune Express out of Kermit. That's going to come online in the fourth quarter, and we think it's going to contribute meaningfully, and we think numbers are going to come up on that.
How long have you guys owned this one?
We've been in it, well, it's only been public for about a year. We haven't been in quite that long, but we've been in it for a while.
Yeah, and adding to the position?
We have, yeah. It's one we're excited about.
The other one we want to get to is on holding, and I'm going to be full disclosure. I own the sneaks.
I think you bought him after you interviewed the CEO, one of the CEOs, Carol. Is that right?
Yeah.
He was here for the marathon.
He was actually like a co-CFO and a CEO. Yeah, I did. I picked his brain. I was like, okay, so tell me. Here's what I need. My feet are a little sensitive, and I'm like, tell me what I need to do. I bought the sneakers. I paid for them. They are, mine full and fair.
So some Swiss shoes.
Yes, indeed. So what is it that you like about On?
So it's exciting. There's not a lot of shoe companies.
Also an outperformer this year. They're up about 42% this year.
Right. So specifically what happened with this one is the growth has been great. The growth and the margins are great. What was holding it back was that they had some inventory issues. And I think a lot of investors were pretty scared off by the inventory problems. They seem to have that under control. So things were sailing along pretty well. We think it's going to grow about 25% a year for the next 3 years. In addition to growing the core footwear, we think there's, and growing that all over the world. They're just getting going in China and showing some success there. Also, we think there's an opportunity to get some growth in apparel. That's a very low basis of revenue right now. So we think, it's sustainable. You've also got the Olympics this year, which is going to highlight or shine a light on a lot of the athletic companies. So we think On's an interesting place to be in an area where you really don't. It's hard to find growth.
All right, I got to ask you. Palomar is another one you like. It's way up this year. Are you? So help me out here, because these are all really top performers, and yet, as we said, the fund overall is underperforming. Give us a name that's been a little bit more challenging, if you would.
Well, over the last year, these have performed well, but this is just in the last couple of months that these have really picked up. So. These are the names that we've been growing and focused on.
Some other ones in Villere Equity include JB Hunt, among the largest holdings. Second to Palomar. Talk to us about JB Hunt and what you like about JB Hunt.
Sure. So we actually purchased JB Hunt during the COVID downturn, and it just kind of a high quality company that we were able to take advantage of the difficult market environment and take on a position there. It's performed very well. We tend to believe that the U.S. economy is holding up well, and we think the outlook is still bright. The rumors of the recession seem to be not really materializing. So we think the economy is holding up well, and JB Hunt obviously is a great way to play that.
So holding on to it and not looking to get out of it.
Correct. Yeah. We focus on smaller cap companies, but we're not restricted to it. We have an all cap approach. So when we are able to find larger companies with interesting valuations, we're able to participate.
Yeah, and that's about a almost $17 billion market cap company. Hey, listen, Lamar, thank you so much, and thanks for going kind of in and around your portfolio. We appreciate being able to talk some names with you. Lamar Villere, he's portfolio manager at Villere and Company, as we said, about $1.6 billion in assets under management, joining us there from New Orleans.
Hey, taking a look at the equity trade today, seeing a mixed trade. The Dow down 0.5 percentage point. The S&P 500 off its highs, just up less than 0.1%, but still, Carol, closes in the green. Another record for that one. The NASDAQ composite up 0.6%.
Yeah, looking at the S&P 500, folks, about 297 names to the downside, so losing some ground today, 204 to the upside, so not quite an even split, but close to it. This is Bloomberg.
company news headlines on Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The founders of Sprout Social are in talks to take the company private. This according to Reuters, citing sources. The company is said to have hired investment bank Morgan Stanley as an advisor. Sprout up now by 6.6%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings has raised its full-year profit outlook for the second time this month, while also updating its midterm strategic vision. Shares of the cruise stocks all moving higher today. Norwegian up by 7.6%. Royal Caribbean up 3.9%. Carnival Corp up now by 7.2%. Ryanair says ticket prices in the peak European travel season may be flat to modestly higher, with the carrier having to discount fares in the 3 months through June to spur bookings. Michael O'Leary, the CEO of Ryanair, told Bloomberg Surveillance this morning the European consumer does not appear ready yet to scale back on their travel plans.
I don't think we've reached that. I think Europe is a fundamentally different market to the US. North America, you've seen a lot of travel price inflation in the last couple of years. You know, the average fare Southwest charged last year was $170. The average fare in Ryanair across Europe was 48 euros. So there's still a bit to go in Europe, but there's no doubt in my mind that the European consumer is cutting spend, is careful, they're cautious, they want price stimulation. We go out with seat sales, we sell out straight away. But, you know, we have higher interest rates, government's cutting back on inflation. I think consumers are just a little bit nervous there at the moment. I don't think that's a longer-term trend.
Michael O'Leary, the CEO of Ryanair, ADRs of Ryanair, they're lower now by 2.2%. And those are some of our top company stories at this hour. I'm Charlie Pellet, and this is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
All right, everybody, just under 5 minutes left in today's trading session. Going to head over to our TV colleagues and count you down to the close on this. Yes, it's a Monday.
Feels like it a little bit, doesn't it?
It's gorgeous outside of New York City. I feel like it's the first, all-in, gorgeous day.
Enjoy it while you can before the humidity and higher temperatures come.
Love heat, love humidity.
Do you? What?
Bring it on.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, my God. I walk out, and, we're in the air conditioning, and it was whew, the heat. Love it.
Okay.
Is that
I didn't know that.
cray?
I mean, you're just used to it, I think.
I don't know.
This is what you grew up with. It's what you know.
California boy where
I'm
so dry.
Yeah. Ocean breeze.
Yeah. Everything's perfect in California.
That's true.
But I love New Jersey. I love New York. All right. Quick check. A story that came on our radar, courtesy of our YouTube producer, Elizabeth Cedron. Has to do with Eli Manning. You know him. I know him well. I'm a Giant fan. Grew up going to the Giants games. Retired quarterback. Who led the underdog New York Giants to 2 Super Bowl victories. It's pretty cool.
Count them.
Yeah. 1, 2. He alone. Pretty cool. He wants a team of his own.
He does. He's got the Brand Velocity Group. That's his firm. It's hoping to take advantage of potential changes to NFL rules that would allow private equity firms to own minority stake of franchises. The proposals are currently being examined by a special NFL committee, Bloomberg reported back earlier this month.
Yeah, Drew Scheinman, Brand Velocity's co-founder, said the firm is definitely interested in buying a stake in one of the 32 teams, noting that NFL ownership is such a scarce asset. Yeah, it is really scarce.
All these teams,
expensive.
All these leagues have scarce assets.
Yeah, it's just,
the growth has been incredible.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
But they're finding big money, right, potentially in ownership of these teams.
Okay, let's talk about the big money here. The Washington Commanders last year sold for a record $6 billion to a group led by Josh Harris, the co-founder of Apollo Global Management.
Yeah, private equity guys have some money to do it. A growing number, though, of star athletes are vying for ownership of sports franchises. Last year, you might remember Michael Jordan sold his majority stake in the National Basketball Association's Charlotte Hornets at a valuation of nearly $3 billion. Alex Rodriguez, owner of NBA's Minnesota Timberwolves and the Women's National Basketball Association's Minnesota Lynx. I mean, they like to own.
It's a good business so far.
They play and then they own.
It's been a good business.
Good business. Or so I hear.
All right, do you want a team? You get a team.
You get a team. You get a team. You might get a record. We are probably going to get a record. All right, over to our TV colleagues. Beyond the Bell, folks. Starts right now.
Bell, full market coverage of everything that happened today as we take you to the Bell and beyond.
On the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Alex Steele. We're counting it down to the closing bell. And here to all take us beyond the bell, it's a global simulcast with Scarlett Fu here in the TV studio, Carol Masser and Tim Stenovic reunited in the radio booth. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms.
She's singing, guys.
Radio, TV, YouTube,
reunited.
and apparently now we're also on Spotify.
Might have been our last simulcast after that. I don't know.
Uh-oh, they're coming in. They're like, Carol, could you come here, please? Yeah, are we going to get another record, guys?
I don't know. We're fading a little bit, aren't we?
Yeah, we're fading a lot, right? It feels like from where we were earlier, it feels like, I don't know, are we just getting a little tired, quite a run-up this year, or just waiting for NVIDIA? Again, we're always waiting for something.
I mean, Abigail was in here earlier, and she said just the past few days, everybody's been waiting for NVIDIA. Just such little volume, such little action, small moves, Scarlett. Everybody's just waiting for Wednesday.
Everyone's just waiting for Wednesday, but let's not forget that either we're at record highs or at or near record highs, and it's not just for U.S. stocks. You also have the MSCI All Country World Index set to close at a high if it does end up positive. Gold and copper at record highs, so there's a lot of money being put to work. There's a lot of liquidity out there, frankly.
I took pictures of some guy on 59th Street with like these huge copper pipes, and I took a picture. I said, I'm not taking you, I just want to take the copper pipes because copper's really expensive, and he looked at me like, go away, little girl, just go away.
I mean, there's a lot to say about both of those two things, but instead I will talk about Norwegian Cruise. Talk about, stocks that are doing well. I mean, it boosted its adjusted earnings per share forecast for the full year. It's relifting its peers. Again, not just tech.
All right, we're getting the closing bells here in New York. A mixed bag all around with the Dow Jones Industrial Average losing roughly about 200 points on the day. That's a loss of about 0.5% here. Interesting moves here in the S&P 500. It takes some time for these numbers to settle, but we should point out the record high from last week was at that right around that 53.08 level, and it looks like we did break that here today. So 53.08.24 looks like is where we are going to settle at, and that would be a record high, but only by about, I think, less than a point or so. It's up about 5 points on the day, 0.1% higher on the day. The NASDAQ Composite up more than 100 points, or 0.7% to a fresh record high, as is the NASDAQ 100 and the Russell 2000. Modest gains here on the day, up about 7 points, or 0.3%.
All right, Romaine, and just kind of an even split. If you look at the S&P 500, you've got about 213 names gaining some ground on this Monday session, 286 to the downside. So a little bit of a more down tone, if you will, and we've got Scarlett 4 unchanged.
Yeah, I've lost track of the number of record highs the S&P 500 has set this year.
I think this is 24.
24?
Can I just point out, the record high, I just wanted to double check, was 53.08.15. We closed at 53.08.20.
Just by a hair.
So I don't know if you bought a hat for that, but that would be impressive if you.
I would just need Post-it notes for the last two, numbers after the decimal point.
That's 100% true.
All right, let's take a look at the sector movers here, because a pretty mixed day when you look at how many sectors finish in the green versus how many in the red. Let's start with the gainers, since we did close at a record high. Infotech, and that's really Jabil that leads the way there. 1.3% higher. Communication services also gaining, but just by 1/3%. Industrials also finishing in the green. On the downside, JP Morgan dragging the financials lower, consumer discretionary, and real estate investment trust losing about 2/3 to 3/4%.
All right, guys, let's get to some of the individual gainers. And you've got number one gainer in the S&P 500, Norwegian Cruise, and also kind of lifting the overall group. Norwegian coming out, raising its full-year profit outlook for the second time this month, while also updating its midterm strategic vision. The cruise industry, we've known unprecedented demand this year. Royal Caribbean and Carnival also reporting record booking levels. So really the whole group was on fire today. Norwegian up about 7.5%. Carnival, by the way, up about 7.3%. All right, I'm sure you guys talked about this story. I'm guessing you did. Hims and Hers Health, a name that had never been really on my radar, but this one finishing off its highs. It was up 38% at its best levels of the day, 27% though at the close here. This is a company that basically is offering a similar treatment with the same active ingredient as Wegovy, but for $199 a month. It has to do with compounding, and when there's a short supply, which there are of these diet drugs, they're able to kind of create something very similar.
Don't give away the whole story because we're supposed to talk about this in a few minutes.
Okay, I'm not going to give it away.
Please.
But anyway, an outperformer in a big way. NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday. This one an outperformer today, folks, up 2.3%.
I'm sorry, what's the whole story? Now I'm intrigued.
You're going to have,
You're gonna have to wait, Romaine.
That's called a tease.
Okay, all right.
All right,
There you go.
NVIDIA up 2.3%. Got earnings on Wednesday. Barclays increasing its price target on the stock. The broker saying it sees more upside for data center revenue compared to current estimates. So, yeah, we're all waiting for NVIDIA. And Scarlett mentioned J-Bill. It was up about 5.5% in today's session. Top of the S&P 500 earlier. The manufacturing services company confirming its previously provided fiscal third quarter projections for profit and revenue. And it also named a new CEO, some changes in the C-suite. So also mentioned that it completed an investigation related to corporate policies and saying that investigation did not impact financial statements or financial reporting. I'm done.
Okay, the gainers. I got some decliners. I want to talk about JP Morgan Chase because it did trade to an all-time intraday high before actually falling more than 4% today. It fell 4.5%. The company came out and raised its forecast for this year's net interest income. It is its biggest source of revenue. But then Jamie Dimon told shareholders that his retirement timetable is, quote, not 5 years anymore, in response to a question about how long he planned to remain CEO. This all happened during the firm's investor day. He said that the bank is well on its way with its succession plans. He's been at the top job going all the way back to 2006. He's 68 years old. And earlier this year, he did move some of his top lieutenants into new senior roles. The idea is that it gives them more experience running other parts of the firm as he prepares potential successors. Ulta shares also falling today, down 3.3%. Ulta Beauty shares fell after Piper Sandler cut its price target on the retailer. Piper Sandler maintains an overweight rating on the stock. And I do want to end with Instacart here, down 4.4% today. It did slide as much as 6% earlier in the session after the company's CFO said at the JP Morgan Global Technology, Media, and Communications Conference that the company doesn't expect to exceed its gross transaction value guidance. She said the company's approach to GTV guidance is to try to provide its best projection of what's going to happen in the quarter. And she said that we're providing guidance that we do not expect to exceed, which, of course, disappointed investors.
I just want to go back real quickly to the S&P 500. We said it closed at a record high. We also say it takes a while for these numbers to settle. They have now settled, and it is not a record high. So we should just point out 5308.
Remove the banner.
Was the record high from May 15th. The official close today right now is 5308.13. So
Thank you for the correction.
One of these people keeping score here. Scarlett, change or post it.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That's why I have the Post-it notes on the hat.
But
Take off the cap.
We're joking, but we're not actually, because she does have Post-its where she puts things. This is I know this because I do the same thing. All right, let's get a quick check in here on yields. They were up. The 10-year yield is above that 50-day moving average. So let's kind of all know a little bit of selling there in the bond market, Scar.
All right, we have Zoom Video coming out with results. Let's go with the first quarter adjusted EPS at $1.35, beating the consensus estimate of $1.19. Revenue slightly higher than anticipated, $1.14 billion versus $1.13 billion. Keep in mind that this is a small single-digit increase in revenue, and that has not happened, this single-digit revenue increase since fourth quarter of 2022. As for the outlook for this quarter, is the second quarter revenue of $1.15 billion to, nope, that's a typo, so we'll come back to that. Second quarter adjusted EPS of $1.20 to $1.21. Analysts were looking for $1.24. So that outlook for second quarter EPS does fall short. Full year revenue, $4.61 billion to $4.62 billion. Previously, you saw about $4.6 billion. Analysts were looking for $4.61 billion. That's a very narrow range. You typically don't see that for these outlooks.
I think you put a piece of cold cuts like in the middle of it, like it's so thin. Hey, stock's down about 3.3% here in the aftermarket. So investors not liking it. Keep in mind, Romaine, it's down about 11% so far this year. You've got about 5% of the float shorted, but yeah. Investors not really loving what they've got here.
All right, earnings out by Palo Alto Networks as well. The share is moving lower here in after-hours trading. I'm going to start with the forecast. The company sees fiscal fourth quarter revenue at 2.15 to 2.17. The top end of that range is the average of analyst estimates, so effectively the company guiding a little bit light. As for the quarter that just passed, the company reported fiscal third quarter revenue of $2.0 billion. The street was looking for 1.97, so pretty much in line with estimates. And it looked like on the EPS side, I'm not seeing the comparison, but they reported $1.32 there. But again, it looks like the bigger news here is that the full year forecast, the fourth quarter forecast coming in just a little bit light.
Shares down 8.6% as we speak. The company CFO saying that they've remained disciplined in execution while investing in go-to-market and innovation, delivering constant profitable growth yet again in the third quarter, and they look forward to executing against the strategic goals and financial targets as they close out the year.
I just want to go back to Zoom for a moment. So that company was talking about how they have about 191,000 enterprise customers, and they're really touting that, and I think that that's an important point to just capitalize on, because it missed estimates, and that's where they're sort of putting all their money. They don't really care if us, you, me, Carol, all wind up getting Zoom. They really need the corporate customers to do that like a Meta did, and it looks like that estimate missed.
Right, my family chats on the weekend don't matter.
Yeah,
they
don't
really
matter.
want, you know, Bloomberg and everybody else to be on Zoom. All right, compounding, by the way, just head to Bloomberg.com, Romaine, or the Bloomberg Terminal. You can read that story, or maybe we'll talk about it.
Oh, you should have given it all the way because we ran out of time. Sorry.
I should have. All right, guys, watching Palo Alto down almost 7% and Zoom down about 1.7%. All right, that's a wrap. Our cross-platform radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals, Beyond the Bell. We'll see you again, same time, same place, tomorrow.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio.
It is Bloomberg Business Week. That's Carol Masser. I'm Tim Stenevec. And Carol.
I am?
Yeah, you are. That is. I was pointing at you when I said that. This is not my world, but bear with me for a second here, okay?
All right.
Let's say you're a manufacturer. You've designed a specialized widget, but you need a machine to make said widget.
Okay.
Are you with me?
Yep,
Okay,
totally.
you need special machine.
Yep.
Designing that machine, it's not in your wheelhouse because you're a widget designer, not a widget machine designer. That's where Vention comes in. It's a cloud robotics platform that allows people of all stripes to build their own custom industrial machines. It's got some big backers: Bain Capital Ventures, Georgian, Fidelity Investment Canada, Bolt Ventures, among others. It counts Amazon, Boeing, Blue Origin, and Stryker among its clients. That's according to its website. We've got with us the founder and CEO of Vention, Etienne Lacroix. He joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. How did I do? Did I describe
You said
it
it
right?
pretty well. Thanks for having me, Tim. Thanks
You
for having
create
me,
the
Carol.
machines that create the widgets.
We create the machine that create the machine. Correct. And we help small, medium business, mostly, get starting with their industrial automation journey.
So you said small and medium businesses, but some of your
well
clients
known.
are huge. I mean, Boeing, Blue Origin, Stryker, those aren't Amazon. Amazon is not a small or medium-sized
Correct.
business.
We serve both, but let me speak about small, medium business first, right?
Yeah.
Those are 90% of the business, manufacturing business in North America, and they face the same labor shortages and cost pressure as those bigger clients. Yet it's really, really hard for them to automate profitably today with industrial automation technology. Right. If we want to solve to some extent the manufacturing renaissance, this is the problem to solve: small, medium businesses, and that's what we're trying to do here at Vention.
Well, it's the bulk of the backbone, like we talk about, right? What is really the backbone of our economy? Correct. And there's so much, obviously small businesses, but in the mid-cap space, there's so much that goes on. We don't necessarily spend as much time as we do to the big-cap names, but so much is going on there. What would surprise someone who was listening about your business?
Right. I think what's changing in the world of industrial automation is what I call software platforming and hardware productization. Software platforming basically is the ability for somebody who design machine to do all the act of design, programming, deployment in a single platform versus 6 to 10 different point solution today. And hardware productization is having kind of Lego kits, industrial Lego kits, where all the components are de facto compatible with one another. When you bring those two things in the same platform, magic happen, and you can make the act of designing those machines that make the machine significantly faster and accessible to small, medium manufacturers.
Etienne, give us an example. Like, I think if somebody's listening, and I get when you're kind of talking like big picture and stuff, but give us an example of something that you've done without maybe giving away too much of what you have done for a customer.
Let's say you're a small home decor manufacturer. You're manufacturing wood frame for Walmart, and you need to apply glue. There's a machine that needs for that. In fact, on manufacturing floor, most manufacturing assets are custom made. They're unique. They're unique to the finished good being manufactured. And as a result, those unique finished good manufacturing asset needs to be designed and programmed. So you're the small, medium frame manufacturers, wood frame manufacturers, you need to figure out how to staple that frame, how to apply glue, how to apply the back cover. Today, those things are made with custom machines that are designed with traditional technique.
So how much time and money does your technique save versus a traditional technique?
When you start to platform and productize, what we see our users save is around 40% and go 3 to 5 times faster than more traditional industrial automation technology. This is a game changer for the industry.
So you're actually creating the equipment. I bring this, right? Because I'm bringing this up like early on as a college kid, and my mom worked for a company, and I would spend some time in summers and my time off working for them, and they were a plastic company, and they made things like sprockets and gears, and they would have molding, and they would have all these corporate customers, and they would custom design the molds, if you will, to make whatever designs they needed.
Correct.
So you guys are actually doing, if I was kind of doing apples to apples, the molds or the devices and designs to make whatever that they have,
Well,
your
that
clients.
gear that is initially molded needs to be put in and out of a machine. Probably it's a human doing that today, but it could be a robot. And that robot needs to figure out how to take the part out of the machine, how to put it in a tray so it can go to the next operation. That machine that replaces a human is unique. And those machines are really, really hard to design today, right? That's what we're solving.
So, like, you do have some big customers, though. You have Tesla, you have Facebook, you have Apple. Can you share what you do for them?
So even in those large throughput manufacturers, you always found what I call secondary and tertiary process. It's not the final assembly line. It's perhaps the metrology lab or perhaps the R&D lab. And those lower throughput processes also need to be automated. And it's really, really hard to automate with today's technology because the cost is simply not compatible with the payback. That's what we're going to do with those Tesla and Apple of the world.
So if somebody were to use the product, or when somebody does use the product, they design it using their web browser.
Correct.
Sort of like a version of CAD on the web browser.
You design with industrial Lego. You go online, you will design with a library of industrial Lego parts, robot conveyors, sensor motors. You will see price in real time, assembly time in real time, automatic bill of material. When you're done, you program in a code-free environment so we keep the experience simple, and you order, and you get your IKEA box equivalent the next day for you to assemble.
How much time does it take?
So from an ideation of a machine to the delivered machine, we have clients to go as fast as 3 days. And that contrasts with the traditional world of automation where those projects takes 3 to 9 months.
You know, when you're setting up something from IKEA, it has the picture of like the two people standing there scratching their heads.
You mean that?
Yeah, and they're like, the question mark is over their head.
That you stare at for like
we like to say that we make it easier than IKEA because we actually laser engrave the part number on the parts. You know what goes where.
Okay, that's what I was going to check
But
on.
how easy is it to do? Like, how much customization do you have to ultimately do? Because it sounds like you guys have things that people can kind of take off the shelf, right? But how much customization goes into this process?
There's around 2,000 templates available online for people to jumpstart their journey, but most people design, again, machines that are unique to them, right? The goal is not to serve here a control expert or a roboticist. The goal is to serve an average manufacturing professional who knows his shop well, but couldn't do it if the tool is too complex.
How often does that average manufacturer need to pay you money? Because I'm thinking here, is there an opportunity for recurring revenue?
Yeah.
Or is this like, you know, you fill your shop with the parts you need, and then you don't need to go back to vending?
Actually, most of our business is actually reoccurring, instead of saying recurring. And those manufacturers, when they learn the tool that are freely available online, stick to it because it's so easier and more convenient than more traditional approach.
So for their next machines?
And we go for the next machine and the next machine and the next machine.
So the business that you are seeing, so do you play in like the small and mid-cap space, although you do have some really well-known companies as well. What you are seeing, what does it tell you about the level of business activity that's happening right now? And what does it tell you about the business economy?
So we're definitely operating at a lower level than what we've seen in 2020, 2021, and mid-2022, right? That said, the cost pressure and the labor shortage are just as intense as they were back then.
So the pressure, the need to automate.
The long tail the long tail win is there until 2030 because the labor shortage in the United States is structural until that time.
So what does that mean for your business in terms of what kind of growth you anticipate?
Well, we're quite happy.
2030, you're seeing that's a pretty long runway. You're saying 6 years out that you say the labor market, there's going to be shortages.
Correct, right? So we're very well positioned to leverage those tailwinds and help those small businesses automate by themselves.
Profitable?
Not yet. There's a lot to build the next industrial automation giant. So we deliberately invest quite a bit in R&D.
IPO on the horizon?
Because Vention is a platform business and there's so many revenue stream monetization potential, yes, Vention has the characteristic to be an IPOable business.
Very cool stuff.
When?
Yeah.
When?
You know, we'll see what the future brings to us, but the rhythm we grow, we believe is going to be possible before the end of the decade.
All right. Etienne Lacroix, thank you so much. Founder and CEO of Vention, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Carol Master, Tim Stenevec. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Okay, today I'm going to talk about how to succeed with a startup. Obviously, more than can be said here in 20 minutes, but I will do the best I can. The most important thing, the number one lesson we try to teach startups is that the degree to which you're successful approximates the degree to which you build a product that is so good, people spontaneously tell their friends about it. Startups always ask us for the secret to success. They always want to believe it's something other than this, because this is really hard to do. But this is it. If you can build a product that is so good, people spontaneously tell their friends about it, you have done 80% of the work that you need to be a really successful startup. If you think about the most successful companies you know, Google, Facebook, whatever, you probably found out about them because a friend of yours said, you got to try this, it's great. So this is the bar. Something that people love so much they tell their friends about it. One important indicator for a product like that is a product that's simple to explain and easy to understand. If you can't explain in a few words what you do, and if at least some people don't say, oh, that's pretty interesting, that's usually a mistake. It's usually a sign of unclear thinking or a need that is not big enough.
I want a bank that shows me what I spend instantly.
We're Monzo. Give us a go. See?
Well, I want a bank that can help me budget for the things I need, like a new leather jacket for Bingo.
We can do that.
Bingo's my cockapoo.
Hi, Bingo.
It's a real faff to sign up.
It takes less than 10 minutes.
Race you.
You're on. Time's up. How'd you get on?
It's a draw.
Is it? We hear you, Bingo. You make Monzo Monzo.
Hi, I'm Laurie Haynes, CEO and co-founder of Shirar, and I'm really excited to tell you that we are going to be raising funds for Shirar again. After a successful raise in 2023, it's time to scale.
We hope that you enjoy the pitch deck and the financial model. Any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us, and we can't wait for you to be part of Shirar.
It's 4:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long at Bloomberg, and this Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by Mass Mutual, a leader in wealth management offering financial advisors the best of both worlds with resources to help you run your business and the freedom to run it your way. Learn more at massmutual.com/wealth. We begin with a headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Peloton Interactive has kicked off the sale of a new loan, $1 billion loan as it works to refinance existing debt and recover from a recent slump in sales. After hours, Peloton shares, they are trading lower now by 12%. S&P 500 index ending the day very close to a record 5308, up today by 0.1%. Dow Industrials down 196, a drop today of 0.5%. Nasdaq up today by 0.6%. 10-year 4.44%, the 2-year 4.84%. Gold up 0.4%. 24.24 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.5%. 79.67 for a barrel of WTI. Jamie Dimon has long joked that his retirement is 5 years away, no matter when he's asked, but not today. During the firm's Investor Day, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase told shareholders the timetable is not 5 years anymore. He says the largest American bank is well on the way with its succession plans. JP Morgan down today by 4.5%. Recapping, S&P up by 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And just to rehash once again, Peloton down about 9.5%. Charlie, of course, breaking down that news, but we'll keep an eye on it here in the aftermarket.
Thank you for that update, Charlie Pellet. Well, Kara, earlier we heard from the CEOs of some very well-known companies. Microsoft, Dell.
Heard of them.
NVIDIA.
Big time.
ServiceNow.
Yeah, these are all well known, right? They're household names today, yet weren't when they got their start years ago with the help of venture capitalists and venture money. So what was it that made a venture capitalist or a group of them or a VC firm decide to invest and make a financial bet on one company over others? What were they thinking? And that's what a new book explores, and how that mindset can apply more broadly for decision makers in our world.
With us, we've got Professor of Private Equity and Finance at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business, also the founder and director of the Venture Capital Initiative, Professor Ilya Strebuleyev. On his book, The Venture Mindset, How to Make Smarter Bets and Achieve Extraordinary Growth. Ilya joins us from San Francisco. Ilya, good to have you with us here. You make a point at the beginning of the book saying this is not a book about venture investing. It's a book about the venture investing mindset. So tell us how exactly the mindset of a venture capitalist, what those people do when they succeed, and perhaps more importantly, what they do when they fail, will make any decision maker better at their job.
Thank you. It's great to be here. First of all, the book is about the venture mindset principles that smart VCs follow. And the first principle to follow is why home runs matter and strikeouts don't. Because you talked about success, which is home runs for VCs, and failure, which is about strikeouts. And the venture mindset could be described as the new mental mindset that you should follow in the innovation-driven world, where you face a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unpredictability. And VCs have been facing this hostile environment for more than 50 years, making decisions and catching home runs. Do you know that if you look at all the companies that became public in the United States in the last 50 years, every second one of them was venture-backed? Do you know that 6 or 7 or 8 companies out of top 10 by market cap today were venture-backed when they were small companies? And moreover, as my research shows at Stanford, there's causality, which means that had there been no venture capital industry, likely there would have been many of those companies that changed our lives, such as Apple, Netflix, Airbnb, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and so on. So this is what the venture mindset is really about.
Well, what do you make, though, of the venture mindset back in the 1999-2000 era, when it seems like money was just thrown at anything with a .com after it? And a lot of those companies didn't exist for very long. So what do you make of that venture mindset? And was that failure good in some ways?
That is a great question. First of all, what we discuss in our book is FOMO, F-O-M-O, which is fear of missing out.
I think it's something a lot of our investing audience is familiar with at this point.
NVIDIA, anybody?
Yeah.
Or anyway, go ahead.
Absolutely. But what is really interesting is that smart VCs are trying to avoid FOMO as much as possible. And one way to avoid it is what a friend of mine, Alex Rampel from Andreessen Horowitz, calls it: conviction must beat consensus, which means that if everybody is trying to invest in something, maybe that is time to invest in something else. So if we look in the late 1990s, or indeed if we look at crypto, okay, or if we look at some other bubbles in the last 10, 15 years, many of them were driven, in fact, by investors that were not following the venture mindset principles, in fact. In the 1990s, there were also a lot of amazing companies born, and a lot of investors made great investment decisions.
I'm wondering about the idea of saying no more often than you say yes, because that's something that I hear about venture capital. It's that you have to be really selective when it comes to deciding which firms you're going to deploy money into. So how do you take that mindset and apply it beyond the venture capital world? And explain what you mean in the chapter that you write. You have to be selective, but not in the way that you may think.
So first of all, this is the principle called say no 100 times. And indeed, my research shows that...
It's like being a parent, right? But maybe on a parent, it's more on steroids. You say it a lot more. But go ahead, please.
When we think about how venture capitalists make decisions, for each investment they make, they say no more than 100 times. Wow. Okay? Now, if you think about this, if you spend a lot of time trying to decide how to make these no's, how to say these no's, in fact, you will have no time to proceed with a good due diligence. So what venture capitalists do to make it more efficient? What I've discovered is that they use two different decision-making modes at the beginning and at the end of their journey with each deal. At the beginning, or at the top of their deal funnel, they use what I call the fast lane approach. And at the bottom, they use the slow lane approach. And I think all of us can benefit from this. So what is the fast lane approach? You are approaching the potential investment opportunity, or indeed any potential decision, by asking, why should I not proceed with even thinking about this investment decision? So this not is critical. If you ask instead, why should I do it? Then you will go down a completely different path. And this is what VCs are doing. They're asking themselves the question, why we should not do it?
Yeah.
And then try to identify a red flag. So they use red flags, and red flags could be different for different types of investments. But once they hit a red flag,
right,
they will stop thinking about investing in this opportunity and will move on. Here is an interesting point. Writing this book was great fun because as a part of writing, my co-author and I watched hundreds of hours of Shark Tank episodes.
I love Shark Tank. You're speaking.
You're not the only one.
I love it.
People love that show.
It's fascinating.
Many, many love it. In fact, we loved it so much, we also watched the Canadian version called Dragon's Den.
Watch that too.
Now, but we watched it for research purposes.
Yeah.
And this is what we looked at. We looked at how sharks and dragons ask questions, and when it is clear that the answer failed or raised a red flag, even their facial expression suggested that they lost entire interest. They just completely checked out. This is what smart VCs do as well. The moment they hit a red flag, they move on to the next deal. Here is a quick example for you. Let me take back you to 2007, when the first iPhone was released. And file sharing was in the air, but was not yet possible because there was no Wi-Fi, there were no smartphones. One investor of Sequoia Capital at the time, his name was Samir Gandhi, was very interested in this. And with his partners, he tried to prepare his mind. He tried to meet with a lot of startups. He, I think, met with like more than 50 teams that were developing file sharing. Mm-hmm. And he decided not to invest in any. He said no to every single one of them. Why? Because they hit his red flag. What is his red flag? Well, it turns out to be his red flag was, I wanted to meet, he told me, a team from whom I could learn how to do it. You know, nobody was doing this.
Right.
But I spent a lot of time trying to identify what that was. And I was meeting with those teams, and then I was not learning anything. And then he met with two guys who didn't have any money. I actually think they didn't have the money to fly across the country. They took a Greyhound.
Right. Just got about
drive
20 seconds, and then we'll come back and talk more. Go ahead. Just finish up there.
I think Ilya froze. Hey, we're going to have to continue the story on the other side, but it's a good cliffhanger because it takes us back to 2007.
Yes.
And we get to continue with Ilya in just a few minutes. The new book is The Venture Mindset, How to Make Smarter Bets and Achieve Extraordinary Growth. Ilya Strebulev is a professor of business and the founder and director of the Venture Capital Initiative over at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business.
I want to ask him about AI. I also want to ask about VCs and minorities, if you will. So we're going to get into it, continue that conversation. Right now, though, a check on world and national news. Back to Amy Morris we go. She is in D.C. Amy.
All right, thank you, Carol. And the prosecution has rested its case in the Donald Trump criminal hush money trial. The defense said it would only be calling a couple of witnesses. They might be able to rest their case today. However, one of those witnesses was a former New York prosecutor, Robert Costello, and at one point during his testimony, he was cut off by an objection, a sustained objection, and he said, geez. And Judge Juan Merchan excused the jury, cleared the courtroom, scolded Costello over using proper decorum in his courtroom. I'm, of course, making this a lot shorter, but this was a big deal. He's back on the stand now. There's a very tight rein over his testimony. We're going to look into that for you some more. There has been a lot of speculation over who Donald Trump will pick as his running mate in his quest for the White House. One name that has emerged as a possible vice presidential pick, Republican Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, who said she would be considering the post.
I am sure he has a long list, many of which are our colleagues, and we're rooting for them for sure. Bottom line is we're going to all do everything that we can to get Donald Trump back in the White House and also take back the Senate, because the fate of our nation is at stake, and we believe that that's worth fighting for.
Republican Senator Katie Britt of Alabama speaking with Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern. The corruption trial of New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez resumes today. Federal prosecutors focusing on the Egyptian connection. Prosecutors taking a deep dive into how Menendez allegedly used his position as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to help a New Jersey business tycoon land a monopoly deal with Egypt. The Supreme Court turning away a challenge to one assault weapons ban, taking no action on another. The justices rejected a case involving Maryland's ban on semi-automatic assault-style rifles. At the same time, the judges took no action on a similar law that was in Illinois, leaving open the possibility of a Supreme Court case on the Second Amendment coming up at a later date. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it, with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg.
4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Palo Alto Network shares down after hours by about 8%. Palo Alto tumbling after delivering a disappointing sales forecast for the current period, renewing concerns about a slowdown in cybersecurity services. Again, after hours, we do have Palo Alto down now by 8.9%. Very close to another record today, but we did not hit that number, down by less than 0.02% away from the record. The S&P, to be clear, was up today by almost 5 points, 53.08. A gain today of 0.1%. Dow Industrials down 196, drop there of 0.5%. NASDAQ, the composite index, up 108, gain there of 0.6%. 10-year 4.44% with a 2-year yielding 4.85%. Spot gold up $10.50 the ounce, up 0.4%. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.5%, 79.68 a barrel on WTI. So it turned out to be a mixed day. Cameron Dawson at New Edge Wealth does see stocks continuing to move higher.
This market could still have room to run. It doesn't mean that we can grow complacent on things like EPS growth and GDP growth, which we think are really important to watch. But the technical backdrop is supportive. We're not quite overbought yet. This just means that we've hit all-time highs and there likely is some still gas in the tank.
And again, Cameron Dawson of New Edge. Recapping S&P up 4 today, gain of 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. I want to get back to our guest. We're talking with Professor of Private Equity and Finance over at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business, founder and director of the Venture Capital Initiative. We are talking with Professor Ilya Strebulev, on his book. It is called The Venture Mindset, How to Make Smarter Bets and Achieve Extraordinary Growth. Still with us from San Francisco.
Okay, we're so sorry we lost you during the last
Yes.
story. You were telling us about going back to the peak of 2007, 2008. What ended up happening to these folks you were speaking about?
So I was talking about Samir Gandhi and his partners at Sequoia, and they were all excited about file sharing. And Samir and his partners interviewed dozens and dozens of startup teams, and they said no every single time. And one of the
Another thing that startups need to look for is a market that is either started to undergo or is soon going to undergo exponential growth. I think this is actually related to one of the biggest mistakes investors make when evaluating startups. Investors always say, well, what's your growth rate? We care about the growth rate. Investors will forgive smallish revenue today if it's growing quickly. For some reason, people don't think about markets this way. But if you think about the most important startups, they are the ones that I start in small markets that are growing very, very quickly. 11 years ago, the market for iPhone apps was $0. It's now huge. And I think if you only think about the TAM today, you'll make a big mistake. What you really want to do is identify a market that's going to grow every year and be able to ride that up elevator.
I want a bank that shows me what I spend instantly.
We're Monzo. Give us a go. See?
I want a bank that can help me budget for the things I need, like a new leather jacket for Bingo.
We can do that.
Bingo's my cockapoo.
Hi, Bingo.
It's a real faff to sign up.
It takes less than 10 minutes.
Ratio.
You're on. Time's up. How'd you get on?
It's a draw.
Is it? We hear you, Bingo. You make Monzo Monzo.
My general advice is continue to seek out companies or people that are maybe one stage or two stages ahead of you. And I think this is generalizable to not just to startups, but anyone seeking fast growth in their own professional lives, in their careers too. What does greatness look like? Try to seek out people who've been there, done that before, and then try to not connect with one, but try to interview 3, 5, 10 people to see what is a general pattern of greatness that look like that will get you to the next level of the company, next stage, maybe a year, 12 months from now, 24 months from now. Seek out people who kind of went down the path a few times. Then you'll start to find this pattern that start to emerge. What are things that you need to have 12 months from now, 24 months from now that you currently don't have? Then try to like build a path towards that. It's almost like Amazon's or Jeff Bezos' mantra of working backwards. Think about what your end game or next stage look like, and then figure out your steps to getting there, and who do you need to work with, upgrading or coaching your existing team or recruiting from somewhere else to really level your leadership. Because ultimately, the job of a CEO is to do 3 things, right? One is get the strategy right for your company, making sure it's executed, get the right teams onboarded, getting the resources, whether it be fundraising or allocating your resources. So strategy, people, or team, figuring out how you need to navigate those things to get to the next level.
Capitalists. And I do wonder about, here we are once again talking about Black entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs still struggling to kind of get seen and get that VC money. It just doesn't flow like it does to white men. It's just, you know the numbers, you know the data. I don't need to explain it to you. So is it because for a venture capitalist that comes up as a red flag? What is that about?
That is a great question, and I think that is a very important problem these days. First of all, let me go back and tell you about one of my research studies. What we did is we created with my PhD student 50 fake startups. We had a lot of fun creating those startups with fake websites, fake profiles, and so on. And then we created 200 fake founders. Why 200? Because each startup had 4 fake founders. Either it had a white man founder, a white woman, an Asian man, or an Asian woman. And then we created blurbs, decks, and whatnot. And we sent the emails from these fake founders about these fake startups to actual venture capitalists, also to actual active angel investors. We sent in total about 80,000 emails. And we checked the responses. And when I say the response, what we say is a positive response. For example, can we meet on Zoom for a chat? Can you send us the pitch deck? Can you go and meet my partner who is interested in this deal, and so on. First of all, what we really found interesting is that the response rate was very high. You know, when I started this project, every single VC whom I talked to told me not to do it because they don't respond to cold calls. Well, we got between 8% and 15%, like every 12th to every 6th venture capitalist and angel investor responded.
Right.
In fact, most successful VCs were more likely to respond. And we also found out that venture capitalists, the most successful ones, tend to respond more to female entrepreneurs and to Asian entrepreneurs as well. So the conclusion here is that it is not at the beginning of the process where the problem lies. It's typically lies towards the end of the process. And here's something that is really important.
And just got about 30 seconds left. Yeah, forgive me, go ahead.
Many VC firms make decision by consensus. You know what consensus is?
Yeah.
It's like 6 people together in the same room have to make decisions. And I think this is where the problem lies, as my research shows. So to resolve this problem, to diversify the founders, we need to change how we make decisions in groups. And again, this is the part of the venture mindset principles. Agree to disagree.
Interesting.
Really interesting.
Oh my gosh, what a great way to wrap up. Really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with us. That is, of course, Professor Ilya Strebulev. His new book is The Venture Mindset, How to Make Smarter Bets and Achieve Extraordinary Growth. He's professor of private equity and finance at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business and the founder and director of the Venture Capital Initiative. We didn't even really get into private equity, which would be a whole other
He's got to come back.
conversation.
Got to come back and visit us.
I bet he has thoughts on private credit, too.
I bet he does.
All right, maybe when it comes out, soft cover.
Okay. Or we'll go to California and do something.
On it. We're
Yeah.
done. All right, Carol Massar, Tim Stadovec, don't go anywhere. More to come.
company news headlines on Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Palo Alto Network shares now down by just about 9% in late trading after giving a disappointing sales forecast for the current period, renewing concerns about a slowdown in cybersecurity services. Big day for a lot of cruise lines. Case in point, Norwegian Cruise Lines up today, advancing after better than expected earnings. It has raised its full-year profit outlook for the second time this month, while also updating its midterm strategic vision. Again, today, shares of Norwegian up today by 7.6%. Rival Royal Caribbean up 4.1%. Carnival up by 7.3%. Ryanair Holdings says ticket prices in peak European travel season may be flat to modestly higher, with the carrier having to discount fares in the 3 months through June to spur bookings. So is this a time for Ryanair to get more aggressive on market share? That question this morning for Michael O'Leary, the CEO of Ryanair.
I would love to. If I could get more aircraft out of Boeing, I'd be on it like a rash. We are taking more market share, though, at the moment in Central Eastern Europe. Wizz have grounded 45 aircraft. Nobody else is expanding in Europe. So we are winning huge amounts of market share, despite the fact that our own capacity growth is constrained by Boeing delivery delays. So we're taking market share. I think that will continue. But if I could get more aircraft, I would try and grow faster at the moment, albeit at the cost of lower airfares.
Ryanair shares today down by 2.3%. Ryanair also says it will be short 23 new Boeing 737 MAX jets this summer, and it's warning deliveries could slip further. And those are our top company stories at this hour. I'm Charlie Pellet, and this is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
All right, everybody. I just want to mention a headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Martin Gruenberg, the chair of the FDIC, will indeed leave his job once a successor is confirmed. This has to do with some toxic workplace reports. You might recall an earlier story on the Bloomberg, how he was facing kind of the biggest threat to his bid to remain chairman of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp. A key Senate Democrat did ask President Joe Biden to replace him.
Yeah, the call by Senate Banking Committee Chairman Sherrod Brown deepened a political crisis at the FDIC that's been raging after findings of workplace harassment and discrimination.
Problems with the FDIC's office culture spotlighted this month in a report by a law firm reflecting complaints from more than 500 people detailing sexual harassment, discrimination, and other interpersonal misconduct. That probe was prompted by a Wall Street Journal report last year that female bank examiners had left the FDIC because of its sexualized boys club environment. That latest description in quote. So those were specific words. But again, FDIC Chair Gruenberg is leaving the job after those toxic workplace reports.
I wonder if that's something that you guys are going to cover tonight on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. Tonight, I say tonight, but Doug Krisner, I mean tomorrow, Tuesday.
Yeah, we may get to it. I don't know much about the story. I saw the article that you were just referring to, the Sherrod Brown commentary.
We were just playing catch up a little bit.
You know, change needs to happen. I don't know much about the way in which the FDIC functions. I'm sure that when the Biden administration came in, they made some appointments to the extent that they have the ability to put new people in charge, but there is probably an entire group of, you know, kind of civil servants, people who have been in the job for many, many, many years, and I'd have to really kind of take a closer look at how the organization is run more broadly. Yeah. But clearly, I mean, you know, change is what Sherrod Brown said was required, and so this is the first step.
Yeah, so it's happening. Having said that, you know, it's only Monday. We've got NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's questions about whether or not they outperform and provide more momentum to the equity trade. But if they disappoint, how that might take some of the air out of the trade that we've seen as of late.
Well, so much of the conversation that we had today, whether it was the Microsoft event, whether it was the Dell event, I mean, it all comes back to artificial intelligence, right?
Well, we had a great conversation with two members of our BI team about, you know, AI PCs, and we were talking about it with the head of AI at Qualcomm last week
on Thursday.
And our own internal folks are saying, you know, an AI PC, it's a whiles away.
Having said that, though, I mean, what is clear is that the cloud is going to be required, which is the NVIDIA story as it relates to Dell. And this partnership that the two of those companies have, which is why Jensen Huang was feeling so positive about, if you want to invest in kind of cloud/AI infrastructure, that the play going forward is going to involve Dell. And at the same time, Dell is going to be doing the similar thing that Microsoft has unveiled, which is a PC that's explicitly designed to be able to kind of interface with those cloud structures.
Well, it's three big tech CEOs saying, "Yay, it's all good."
Right. I get it. I was thinking the same thing.
Off-prem AI PC next year.
We're all gonna. It's all good.
You know what? Woo-Jin over at Bloomberg Intelligence told us, I asked him at the end, who's going to do it first? Is it going to be an AI PC